Hey folks, this is Fabrice. It's been a while since I put out my Chapter 1 guide for Ravenswatch, and now the game is finally launched, I'd like to take a little time to review and update it. I used to say that you should take a Vision Tower early for XP, but the modifiers for XP in Nightmare got decreased, so it's easier to farm level 2 off of fights than it used to be. It's still good to fight for Vision early, but it's just not as important. This change also matters towards the end of the chapter because it's way easier to hit level 5 now, with a couple extra minutes you could use to farm objectives on the map. Taking early shard camps is better than it used to be. Magical objects got a huge update after my original guide, and using the shop to start working toward a super effect or just to stack bonuses is highly recommended. Magical objects can be fantastic for your long-term scaling, and you'll want to start getting in some synergies and stacks so that even if you don't get to a super effect in Chapter 1, they'll come online in Chapter 2 or 3 to help you keep scaling. Also, little dream shards out on the map got reworked so they give twice as much as they did during my original guide. It's far more worth it to fight out on the map for them, particularly if you find a cluster of them. I wouldn't fight for the really little shards, and the regular shards are situational based on the enemies around them and how far along you are in your run. That said, I would take time to clear the area immediately around the spawns for shards now. Wells are much better. There are a couple reasons for this. First, there's more money in the game due to Dream Shard clusters giving more value, and second, you don't have to spend everything you have trying to upgrade your talents to maximize Grimoire value. Also, wells got reworked so that they have different magical object rarities based on the color of the well. This makes them an easier market to buy into. I still wouldn't prioritize them unless your dream shards start to stack up. However, if your run is going well and you're in the mid-late phase of a chapter, it's a solid option. Also, and this is a bit of a tangent, there's no such thing as yellow camps because apparently this color is orange. My apologies to anyone I misled. Rerolls are in the game. I wouldn't think too hard about them until you've tried out the majority of magical objects and talents for a character, or have watched some tier lists. I will say though, rerolls are way better than they were when introduced, because you can't accidentally roll the same option again. It was very obnoxious when you hit the button and nothing changed, so this is a very welcome improvement. Camp order isn't as important now. It used to be the case that the first 5 minutes were where a run was made or broken, but now enemies do a little less damage, and you get more XP, making the start of the chapter more forgiving. This also means it isn't quite as important to prioritize damage and short-term gains from items and talent picks, and you can afford to make a couple long-term investments. Just don't get too carried away. Grimoires are very different. You don't get talent rarity upgrades from them, so you don't need to save them to try to get legendary unlocks at the end of the chapter. However, you should probably still wait to take them till you can guarantee finishing the fight within the time limit, which probably means around level 3 for greens and level 4 for oranges and reds. That rule is flexible depending on your character and build, but if you're new, I'd err on the side of caution, maybe even try to get to your level 5 ultimate before tackling a red Grimoire. In terms of which options to prioritize from the Grimoires, it depends on your build. I generally prefer getting more Stars of Fate, critical hit chance, or armor if I'm going for a cheeky build. However, if your build has an absurd amount of critical hit chance, critical damage is good, and if you have one more thing in the shop or a wishing well you want to buy, maybe money is good. I generally stay away from the damage option since it seems a little mathematically questionable in my opinion, but if you're falling behind in the early game, it could be useful to recover momentum. All in all, picking at Grimoires is much more situational and thoughtful than it used to be, which is great. I'm planning to do a deep dive on buffs from Grimoires and how they compare to consumables. That video is going to be pretty rigorous, so keep an eye out for it. The Sandman Shop is completely different now and can really help out your run. You'll get options to duplicate or purchase magical objects, level up your talents at a discount, and short-term buffs. Here are a couple tricks I'd recommend for using the shop. First, check the shop even before you pick your talent in the spawn. Sometimes there'll be a cursed or legendary object available that completely changes your plans. Second, Sands of Oblivion can give great value in the starting shop if there's a talent that has a high rarity but that you don't want to play with. Go ahead and buy it and then use Oblivion to play the talent you want. Third, I used to never take Sands of Enlightenment because I was worried it would affect a high rarity talent by accident, missing out on value. However, if you read it, it says it upgrades the lowest quality talent. You can use this to your advantage. Just upgrade the talents you don't want to make legendary a little, and then leave the talent you want upgraded highly at the lowest rarity. Sidequests got tweaked and improved. The stone and wood quests are still the best, and wood in particular has an argument for being the very best, but the enemies that spawn in are more predictable, making this fight much more consistent. However, because XP isn't quite as scarce, I don't think you have to prioritize the side quest as highly anymore. You should still do it, but not at a strict timing. The straw side quest has gotten better, but it's still the hardest of the three because the camp fights are a little more difficult than the wood quest, and the straw house has a tough position, forcing you to defend it on all sides. Sometimes the enemies still spawn on the far side and you can't peel them off fast enough to keep it alive. This can be frustrating, but still a lot better than it was. A couple months ago, I got so frustrated with the straw quest that I would instantly restart as soon as I realized it was part of the map generation. Now, I would just take it a little later. The old problem with the straw quest blocking starting camps hasn't bothered me as much lately. I think it's because skipping to an orange camp early isn't as hard now that XP is easier to come by, but it might also be that I'm just more mechanically solid than I was when I made the last tutorial. If you're newer, I'd recommend trying to mix up your pathing as an experiment, and if it's too much of a hurdle, don't feel obligated to beat your face against a straw quest. Just reset for a better seed. My tutorial also suggested using extra time on the side quest timer to try to take another camp before turning in materials. That's still fine, but I wouldn't sweat for it quite as much anymore. Part of the calculation behind that advice was that completing the side quest successfully was much harder than it is now, and I was hoping that that one extra camp before the fight might have something which would improve your odds. Now it's not as important, but if you can take an efficient fight before the quest starts, feel free. Another thing you can do in solo play is turn in the materials, instantly teleport back to the Sandman Shop, buy something cool, and teleport back before the enemies finish spawning. You could do this before, but it's even better now because the teleport animation was shortened. By the way, everything I said about teleporting a ton is still true and even better than it was. I definitely wouldn't prioritize Tumors. They've always been a bit of a weird option and nothing has made them more compelling. If anything, with XP being a little easier to come by, they're relatively weaker than they were before. They're also lame, so just don't take them if you're cool. The boss fight plays out about the same as I outlined before, but there are a couple things to highlight. First, since AoE doesn't go through intangible, you don't have to treat the tentacle pools with quite as much respect. Also, Divide has a new animation that makes it more obvious that it goes through intangible, which is great for newer players. Lastly, there's a change to enemy armor that's particularly important in boss fights. In the past, bonus damage from statuses like vulnerable and marked stacked additively with enemy armor. This meant that boss armor, which is 75% damage mitigation, would be reduced to only 25% if you applied both vulnerable and marked to the enemy. Now these bonuses are multiplicative, meaning that your damage will still be reduced by 75%. This affects some builds that could cheese this fight. I'll probably do another video on status bonuses sometime soon to explain this a little better. In conclusion, the game release has gone really well from my perspective as a longtime player of the game. There's a lot of discretion in your itemization and build path, as well as your pathing and prioritization of camps. It's still a pretty challenging game, however, and a lot of folks coming into the community are going to have a rough time getting chased down by cultists, smacked by trees, and poked by pigs when you thought you were out of range. If you're new, I hope you get to enjoy the onboarding, and this guide is intended to help you do that. On the other hand, make sure you don't get too caught up in my advice or a particular build or strategy that you don't explore what else the game offers. The adage, given the opportunity, players will optimize the fun out of a game, really rings true when a game is as challenging as this one. You're generally going to improve more quickly if you find things that are interesting for you to play around than if you just try to force a build a guy in a YouTube video endorsed. I hope you have as much fun and reverie as I've had, and please leave a like and a subscribe if this was helpful for you. Or don't, and I'll see you in the next.